My wife of 15 years friend-zoned me and wants a platonic companionship, so I showed her just that and realized she took me for granted, merely using me for financial support. My wife 35F and I, 35M, have been married for 15 years, and we've been together for 20 years. We have 2 kids, 12, 14, whom we absolutely adore, and we work tirelessly to provide the best possible life for them. For the past 3 years, things have been somewhat bumpy. I understand that our kids are at an age where they require a ton of our attention and resources with school, band, club sports, and other extracurriculars, and I'm aware of the physical and emotional toll that can have on marriages. However, for the past 3 years, my wife and I have had very little intimacy and very little sex, and we've been trying very hard to work on that aspect of our relationship. This past year has been the most difficult and by far the darkest year in our marriage. We didn't talk very much. We essentially became roommates, co-parenting our kids under the same roof. It was very depressing and demoralizing. It was to the point where we began contemplating divorce, and it became very dark and gloomy in the household because of that. We began seeking help with both individualized therapy and couples therapy, and it seems to have helped some. Little by little, we started to get along and started to have deeper conversations about what our marriage looks like and what we would love for it to look like. This is where it gets tough. As time passed, my wife started to tell me she no longer was in love with me and that she only saw me as a best friend. She only loved me in a very platonic way, and this was one of the main reasons she didn't have any desire for intimacy, let alone sex. This was very shocking to me, and quite frankly, I was devastated. I was angry and depressed, and I couldn't fathom the thought that I was no longer wanted or desired by the person I felt completely in love with. Things began to deteriorate again, and not long after, we were back to square one. I sat down with her one afternoon and had a heart-to-heart and began to ask questions about where the root of this problem lies, and her answer was, "I don't know," and that, "I have built up resentment towards you, but I don't know where it stems from." As you can imagine, this provides very little to no insight into how to approach this. I'm puzzled, I'm frustrated, and I do not know what to do at this point. Currently, we've arrived at a place where she says that she has no sex drive and no desire for intimacy or connection. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could possibly do or what it is about me that is so unattractive or undesirable, and her response was always, "I don't know." She stated that she does love me, but it's not the same. She has been feeling disconnected for years, and our marriage just takes up too much work. Her focus is only on the children for now, and my co-parenting contributions are meaningful to her in our home. I'm at a loss, and I'm mainly venting about my frustration. It's tough to realize that the person you love has no feelings for you. I feel like, at this point, I'm only here to contribute financially and as a parent. I feel like what she means by companionship is that she's comfortable with the convenience of having a good father for our kids and my financial contribution to the household. In regard to intimacy and or sex, she basically told me that it's not something she's interested in or wants at this time. She mentioned that the only way to get to a point like that is to be intoxicated, which I believe is incredibly awful and very wrong. I told her I do not think forcing herself to have sex or be intimate by drinking or smoking is good, and I declined to be a part of that, which, to my surprise, upset her and made her more distant. We're both extremely honest and transparent. We've never cheated on each other, and we are always free to look through each other's phones, emails, social media, etc., which we hardly ever do. I asked her if there was someone else, and she declined. Honestly, I believe her. We then peacefully went through each other's things, and as expected, it was clean. We've always been very forward, even with the hard topics, so I don't smell or feel any foul play or infidelity. Am I wrong for declining to only be intimate or have sex when she's intoxicated? I'm firm on my stance of not partaking in this, only when I'm high or drunk as sex because it doesn't sit well with me. I do not know how to help our situation, and I'm starting to become a bit anxious and desperate. We're both fairly young, healthy individuals, and good-looking. We both have good-standing careers and are good parents. I'm just not sure how our lives could have driven us to this point. I'd love some outside perspective on this matter and some insight on how to address something like this. It feels so awful to be unwanted and undesired by my own spouse. I hate it. TLDR, My wife of 15 plus years is no longer in love with me and doesn't know how. And now she says she can only have sex while intoxicated, or I need to settle for a platonic sex-less marriage. She doesn't know why that is, but it is what it is, and I'm in need of insight or advice. Comments. Warthog. From your comment history, it looks like you are swingers. If so, I would think that would be relevant information to consider. Opie, we did some swinging in the past. That was fun for some time. We mutually decided to stop doing it, and we have established that's not the case. When we were swinging, however, our marriage seemed to be in a good place. This is something we did disclose with our couple therapists and made sure to include it to make sure we're not neglecting an obvious potential issue. I will say that I did ask my wife if what she experienced during swinging was something that was affecting her view of our relationship, and she said it wasn't. Our swinging experience was always together, and it was very sex-driven. Nothing really emotional or poly. The truth is, I have to believe her at her word. I have no reason to distrust her. To date, she's always been very forward and never afraid of dealing with things head-on. No matter how painful, fail at opportunities. It's an obvious potential issue, bro. Whether she's enjoying herself as a side piece and wants nothing to do with you in that manner anymore. Or she just went along with you on the swinging and never wanted to do it in the first place. Hence, it brings resentment. Regardless, it should have been included in the initial post. Opie, swinging was her idea, not mine, but I suppose I should have included it. But I honestly believe that it is not an issue. I don't have any reason to distrust her. Maybe it's something she has to accept with her therapist or our couple's therapist. She can't really approach that with a solution if she doesn't think it was a problem. I don't know. Biggie bros. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. That's only a marriage if you both agree it is. You're hoping she's going to wake up one day and feel different. But she's basically said that's not going to happen and doesn't want to figure out why she feels that way. It seems like you tried several different ways to get to the bottom of it, and she's either deflected or is being honest and saying that she's not in love with you. Am I wrong for declining to only be intimate or have sex when she's intoxicated? I wouldn't do this either if that makes you feel better. Will she be your best friend if you live elsewhere and have a relationship with someone who loves you? Probably not, which makes the whole best friend speech feel like self-deception on her part. I won't lie. If it were me, I'd get a divorce. She doesn't seem willing to do the work to fix the marriage, and you can't fix it alone. She might promise to fix it or beg you not to, but you need to follow your gut as to whether she actually can or will fix it. She's serious that she wants you to stick around, but not necessarily as her husband. Opie, it is a very hard truth to accept here. Thank you. Interesting tip 4850. I'm ensuring I do everything possible to mend our marriage to ensure my own peace of mind and excitement. Knowing I did everything I could. You may still consider the 180 method to protect yourself and perhaps at the same time. The reality that the ship is leaving may start to change your wife's perspective. If that doesn't work, what else would? Opie, can you elaborate on the 180 method? Interesting tip 4850. Basically, withhold any unnecessary interactions and affection. This is from an infidelity forum, but the principles are the same. The commenter provided links to the forum. I gave them in the description. Opie, I bookmarked this. I'm heavily considering this. Update. 8 days later. I wanted to give you guys an update on how the therapy session with my wife went this week. I am not sure if this is helpful or not, but I took many of the responses, comments, and suggestions from my initial post and put together some things I wanted to discuss with our couples therapist to help us navigate some of the core issues that may be affecting this situation. One of the main things that is the buzzword of this has been the term resentment, and it has been really eating me up inside. Knowing my wife keeps telling me she doesn't know why she's resentful or doesn't know why this is affecting her emotionally or mentally. I brought this up with our therapist once again and resurfaced the conversation about being married for so long, 15 years, and being together since we were 14 years old. Our long history of growing up and having children when she was 19 years old, I was 20, significantly changed the trajectory of our lives. We experienced severe poverty and many hardships in the process, and we essentially had zero social life for the past 10 years because we were so busy raising babies to kids now ages 12 and 14. She followed up with tons of questions. mostly directed at my wife about her feelings towards this, and 90% of the responses were very our kids focused. It definitely felt like she was afraid of saying yes. It sucked because she would feel guilt or shame because it would imply she regretted the kids. I mentioned this in the session, and the therapist encouraged her to look at this outside of the lens of being a mother and to try to view it a bit more selfishly and individually, and it was very eye-opening. My wife mentioned that she was very frustrated with the fact that we missed out on many things in life. She was also very clear in saying, "I do not think I missed out on other partners, dating, or partying, but I certainly lost all my friends." This was huge because one of the big pieces that has caused a strain in our lives is how lonely and isolated we've been again busy raising kids. I followed up by reminding her that it's important to have good friends and to make time for herself and her friendships. For the past 3+ years, we've had multiple conversations about friends and how it is important to have them in life, especially when you have similar peers that can help in many areas of life that perhaps we have no experience navigating or even simply for enjoyment. It has always been something my wife avoids, even though she's always been someone who needs those external stimuli. The main reason for her not investing in friends, or even herself, has always been the kids. Like I mentioned earlier in this post, 90% of the answers have to relate to the kids to some degree. At this point in our session, I started to feel like there was a common denominator: the kids in most of the frustrations and problems she was experiencing. So I simply asked her, "Do you think you may be upset at me because I'm responsible for these kids in the sense that I got you pregnant so young?" I wasn't ready, but she said that she was upset at me for that. She also followed up with the fact that she knows that's unreasonable because it takes two to tango. I did feel like it was progress because it kind of gave us something to work on and help alleviate some of these burdens, so we agreed to invest more time in nurturing good friendships both together and individually. Towards the end of the session, we began to discuss what actionable items we would take from this session. At this point, it was still all very ambiguous and blurry as to what the outcomes were. I was very direct and very forward in asking my wife what her plan was moving forward. Note, I had decided prior to the session that, should my wife say the same thing about being a co-parenting roommate, I would take the 180 approach and essentially do me. She started basically saying the same thing, that she doesn't have any desire to be intimate or esquo with me as of now, that she loves me immensely, and that she feels bad for not being there for me as mentioned in my first post. I also brought up the brief swinging that happened, to which, for the 50th time, I said it wasn't a problem. I agree with her on this. This was something that was a mechanical approach to a solution to a problem that was very much in existence when we tried it. We both really have no issue with this. We know it happened. We tried it, and mutually stopped and turned the page. I also brought up other life events that may cause resentment, and really, we ended up not getting anywhere else as far as the root of resentment, which was discouraging. I then basically expressed to my wife that I would not be okay with that arrangement. I told her that I've really done everything I can, and that this issue really has reached a point where it has nothing to do with me or requires me to do anything that I'm currently not doing. I was very direct, saying that I will not be accepting this dynamic, and that I need to be with someone who is actively involved in our marriage, works towards resolutions, and is very interested in maintaining an active intimacy and esquel relationship. I expressed how I am not going to be a convenience, and that there is more to life than being roommates and co-parents. I made sure she knew I loved her dearly, and that I did want this to work for the better. I also told her that I'm fully committed to this marriage so long as she is as well, and if she wasn't, that's okay. However, I will not be a part of something where these efforts are not reciprocated. I told her I have no plans of leaving, and I do not want a divorce. However, I made it clear that if this dynamic continues, divorce will be the only outcome. Of course, tears were involved, and it was a very bleak and sad ending to the session. Still nothing was said, and I walked out very discouraged and determined to start working on the 180 as soon as we left the room. It's painful and very difficult because much of the 180 requires you to be very short, cold, and transactional. The saddest part is realizing that this dynamic is already very cold and transactional. Here is where it gets very interesting. I started working on implementing many of the 180 recommendations that same day. I mentioned to my wife that, hey, things are going to be a bit different moving forward. I'm going to honor her rheumatico-parent dynamic without reproach, and that it should be no mistake that I am not happy here, and I am never going to be okay with it. But I am done working on it if she wasn't going to work on it. She agreed and went to bed. I started to build distance and basically focus on myself. Very short and transactional. She asked for help on some of her personal things, which I declined, and it really shocked her. She was upset, saying I was being petulant. I explained to her that she is now fully in charge of her own life and her own issues. We didn't talk all day, and we only spoke when necessary. Few days I keep this going, and she's very visibly upset and stressed. I typically react to that with gestures of help or nurturing, but I didn't this time. At night she was crying, telling me she's stressed, and she thought something was wrong with me because I'm indifferent. I simply listened. Then I told her that this is the dynamic she proposed, and that I'm simply much like her, taking care of myself and focusing on myself. I'm not going to lie. It has been very hard to be cold and distant, because, as I mentioned before, I love her, and I wish I could hold her and love her. However, I know this is somewhat manipulative in a way, just to get her way and still keep me in the friend zone. So I've been staying on course. We're now going on a week of this 180, and let me just say, there have been many changes on her side. I think she is starting to realize there is more to me than just friends and co-parenting. I sent her a text a few days ago essentially itemizing bills and separating the financial responsibilities 50-50, and she lost her SHD. She basically told me it was out of left field, to which I responded, "Hey, friends go in 50-50, and as your friend, I expect nothing less." This was very eye-opening because it gave me a glimpse of how I'm really taken for granted and how her level of comfort and convenience at my expense is really overlooked. I pushed through anyways and basically told her that this is the new dynamic she asked for, and that it's still a bargain because she would have to be 100% if she were on her own. I'll wrap up with this. While the 180 has been working in many different areas, I'm still very sad about the overall situation. There have been many eye-opening statements and realizations that have not been pleasant to encounter. It has also sparked new energy and new efforts on her side as well. She's definitely seeking to talk to me more often, and while it's hard to turn down, I hope if things improve, this will continue to happen. I've also noticed that she's making more time for herself aside from being a mom, which is huge because she pretty much neglected herself for years. I'm very pleased to see her be more herself. My hope is that as we work on ourselves, the marriage improves. There really is no telling at this point where this will go. We are very cordial and amicable, even to this day, and that's a very good sign. Boundaries are set and expectations are very clear, and I feel that no matter the outcome, I will be at peace with everything that has been done. We're still going to continue the couples therapy until we either rekindle our marriage or end up in divorce. I feel like having this non-biased third party really helps as a witness and as a guide through this. No matter what, I will always love my wife. However, I will not participate in a sex less intimacy less marriage because we both deserve better. Thank you all for all the kind words, recommendations, and feedback. This will be my last post on this topic, and I wish you all the best. My wife friend-zoned me to just co-parent at my expense, but I started the 180 method to try and find a solution because she doesn't want to work on us, which seems to be working on getting her out of her rut and helping me discover more about how she feels. Also, therapy is paramount and highly recommended to all couples. Comments. Complete old 1960. Bottom line, not to be brutal, but there is one thing: you don't have an infinite amount of time. This has to be resolved in a timely manner. It takes two to be in love and to be loved, and you only have half of the equation. You need to put a time limit on being a good guy and think of you in your future. I hope it works out for you, but listening to what you are going through and what you could be in for, you can still be a good father, but also be a great husband to another wife if you find that special person again. Opie, definitely. I think this soft ultimatum, 180 method, has been very eye-opening. I'm definitely hoping for a rekindling of our marriage, but I'm also bracing for divorce. I agree on a timeline, and I've decided on a timeline for myself privately. I don't want to give her a timeline because I want to reduce the pressure. However, if things don't improve after 1-2 years, it won't be shocking or a surprise if we split. I think 1-2 years is more than reasonable. She's a killer. I have to agree with this, simply because at some point, the person who has gone 180 and is waiting for the other person to decide will begin to wonder, wow, they're really taking their time coming around to me. Did they love me at all? If they ever appreciated and cared for me, why would they keep me waiting and neglecting me for so long? Except, in my case, it had more to do with the other person being stubborn and unable to admit their faults. Oh, P, I understand what you mean. I don't think I'll ever doubt that she loved me at all. I'm certain she did, and I'm certain she still does. I know it sounds crazy, and I'm not at all infatuated or blinded by love. Love is far more than the intimacy and sex we're lacking. Randy Pan the Goat Boy. I think it's interesting that in the comments of your original post, you said you didn't think she was taking you for granted, but you came to realize she absolutely was. Can you give some more details on what the 180 method is? Yeah, I definitely felt this way. But with this 180-degree method, it's happening right in front of my eyes. Actual actions and reactions are taking place that clearly demonstrate that she is taking me for granted. She actually sees this as well. It's evident she's thinking about this heavily based on her demeanor and her behavior. Let's go to the second story. Opie's entitled daughter falsely accused her stepfather, essayed her, and ruined both Opie's and stepfather's lives. Now she is demanding the money so she can go to college, then accuses Opie of using all her inheritance from her late father. So Opie gives a breakdown of what it costs to raise her and the legal costs she had to endure. My daughter, Ava, was a handful growing up. Her dad passed away when she was 5, and even with therapy, she was a very angry child. I still love her very much. She is my daughter, and I would do anything for her that I could. Her dad didn't have a lot of insurance, but enough to pay off a small house, set aside an emergency fund, and top up my daughter's $529 education fund. I kept adding to it over the years, not much, but as much as I could. When she was 11, I met and married my husband. I thought Ava was okay with it. She never brought up any problems with me or in our therapy sessions. She was not. When she was 13, she accused him of doing something inappropriate. I called the cops immediately. He was arrested, and he lost his job. He was innocent. She did it to get rid of him. We divorced. I was obviously heartbroken. I did my best not to take it out on her. I did punish her. She started acting out. She got expelled from school. Then another. I ended up having to send her to a private school. Even with a voucher, it was expensive. It worked, though. She is graduating this year with honors and a scholarship. She asked me about the money in her account. I said it was all gone. She got very upset because her scholarship wouldn't cover all costs. Even with financial aid, she will still be paying a fair amount. I said I would co-sign a student loan for what she needs. She said that she wanted to know where the money went that I wasted. So I got out a pen and paper and wrote it all down. The cost of my divorce. The rising cost of living that I paid for by myself since I didn't have a partner. Her tuition and fees for private school. By the end, she was crying and saying that I was blaming her for everything. I never have. I did punish her for the trouble she caused with my ex, but I think that was reasonable. She is upset that she will have to take out a loan. I also made it very clear that I would not be responsible for paying it back. She thinks I'm being cruel by saying that she is responsible for stupid things she did as a child. I'm not, but I cannot pull the money I had to spend because of her out of my arse. Comments. Dante Smetch. And Tia, I'm sorry for your ex. I hope he has recovered from the lie and is doing well. She asked what happened to the money, and you showed her. There are consequences, and she is now facing them. Unfortunately, no matter what you do, she will find a way to blame you. Try to get her back into counseling if she agrees. Just know you did nothing wrong and take care of yourself as well. Opie, my ex, is okay. We still talk. He got a new job. He is still angry. He wants nothing to do with her. Old Sheep Herder 630. Information. Does she admit the abuse accusation was untrue? Opie, yes. Hot Freedom 5-8-886.
NTA.
At 13, your daughter would have known the possible ramifications of her actions. Maybe not the financial ones, but definitely the legal ones. Opie, she knew what she was doing.
Laura Story.
Info. How do you know your ex-husband was innocent? Opie, the police investigated. The charges were dropped for lack of evidence. Also, there was evidence that what she claimed was impossible. I will give one example. My ex worked in his truck. She claimed he came home during the day. His truck had a tracker from his employer and a camera that showed he was on the other side of the city. The trouble with you is, if you co-sign for a loan, you could end up being responsible for paying it back. Sir, Tinley. This means co-signing means you put your credit history on the line to help her get approved for the loans, and in the event she defaults, you become responsible. Do not do this if you do not intend to ensure she can make her payments. Judgment. NTA. Update. 1 day later. Thank you all for your comments. Even the ones where you called me a raving bee for calling the cops after my daughter's allegations. First, my ex was completely cleared. He was never home at the time she alleged the saw. We have security cameras in my house. There are exactly 0 videos of him entering her room or being inappropriate with her in the common areas. I have already commented on the other evidence that got the charges against my ex dropped. She admitted the truth and said that she was doing it to get him out of our house. He is doing okay now. He has a new job, and he and I still talk. Her excuse was that she didn't think I would immediately call the cops. She thought I would just kick him out since it was my house. She felt trapped like she couldn't back down. She has never apologized to him. She has been in therapy since she was 5, both on her own and with me. To my knowledge, she never mentioned anything about SAW to her therapist, and they are mandatory reporters. Second, I told her that I would not be co-signing her loans. I told her that I would be backing her up and doing my best to make sure that she did not default. But I was not risking my home or my future for her. She fully understands now where her savings went. She is upset with herself mostly now. She realizes that the private school was my last choice, and it was only necessary because of the choices she made. Thank you all for your help. Third, since I do not care about karma, I will be giving this account to either Ufric Froll or Yevermillion slot tomorrow. They are welcome to delete the posts or sell the account for the 59 cents. It is worth comments. There are also a lot of comments vilifying the daughter for the false allegation. Dissolve dreams. My ex was completely cleared, but the shame never goes away. Loud Management 16 to 634. Yeah, there's a whole former workplace full of people who think he's a pedophile. That's legitimately traumatic. Raisins rock. It sounds like the breakdown of expenses gave her the reality check she needed. Cloistered around. Since I do not care about karma, I will be giving this account to either Ufric Froll or Yevermillion slot tomorrow. What a weird, casual thing to say. Giving an account, not the karma bit. Ocean Sapbart 33. Someone else clarified in another comment that apparently these two were accusing her of karma farming.